Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Monday, February 28th, 2022. History, Black history. President Biden lived up to his campaign promise and nominated a Black woman to the U.S. Supreme Court. D.C. Circuit Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson will now await Senate confirmation, and we discussed that this morning with Let It Be Known's correspondent and the Washington Informer's James Wright. But first, James, a couple of quick headlines to conclude Black History Month. First, we begin with a programming note. We will be live from Orlando this coming Friday as we attend the Disney Dreamers Academy, an educational mentorship program created and hosted by Walt Disney World Resort, marking its 15th year of broadening career awareness and creating exclusive opportunities for Black students and teens from underrepresented communities across America. The program introduces the Disney Dreamers to an array of new immersions designed to continue to foster the dreams of young leaders beyond imagination, including career building workshops, networking sessions, mentorship connections, and introduction to future professional opportunities at the Walt Disney Company and beyond. So look for Let It Be Known this Friday, live from Orlando, Florida. But James, before we get to the headlines, let's bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Dr. Benjamin Chavis. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacey Brown, and good morning to our illustrious special guests. We're making history. This is the last day of Black History Month. I'll be over the White House later today for Black History Month observance on behalf of the NNPA. And Stacey, I know we're in different parts of the country, but I'm so glad to see James and everybody. Let's get it to the headlines. And of course, we're going to have the first Black woman on the Supreme Court of the United States. A qualified Black woman on the
qualified and bona fide. There you go. And so before we get to that, though, Dr. Chavis and James Wright, 3 decades after it was first introduced, the House bill that would create a commission to study reparations for Black Americans has the votes to pass, its key champions say. That broad support, they contend, shows that the idea of reparations has gone from the fringes to the mainstream of American politics. Quote, this has been a 30-year plus journey. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, who's been leading this charge, she said, we had to take a different approach. We had to go one by one to members explaining this does not generate a check. The commission would hold hearings with testimony from those who support and oppose the idea. Sheila Jackson Lee said the country would end up better from the process. She said reparations is about repair, and when you repair the damage that has been done, you do so much to move a society forward. This commission can be a healing process, the representative said. Telling the truth can heal America. So, Dr. Chavis, I know that you've had some discussions about this HR 40. Give us a brief overview of it, and what can we expect after the House does indeed, if they indeed have the votes and they do pass this?
Well, I believe it will pass the House, and hopefully it will also pass the Senate. And this is a study commission, so that by the time the commission completes its work, it'll be clear on what the multiple dynamics, the multiple faceted program would be for reparations. So this is the first official stage. There have been many, not many, but there have been some municipalities in the United States, in Illinois, Missouri, one down south, that have also passed similar bills. So I think this is, reparations is going to be discussed over the next years, but this is a concrete step forward, and we salute Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, for her leadership. The NNPA, we support HR 40.
And James, let me just throw this to you right quick, James, because one of the things that Representative Jackson Lee did indicate that if the Senate, Dr. Chavis, does not agree to pass this bill, this is a type of bill, James, that the president can actually do an executive order on.
And you're absolutely right on that. And kudos not only to Congresswoman Jackson Lee, but to John Conyers, the late John Conyers, who actually got this ball rolling for many, many years before it got to this point. And President Biden does have the power to exert an executive order on this issue. It's very important to understand what reparations is. We're not asking for what other groups have. We're not looking for a check. We just want to go through a process of healing and a process of seeing what can be done to compensate, even physically and not just fiscally, what our ancestors went through. And let me say this, Stacey, it's important that we go through this process so Black people can made to feel whole and white people can understand what they did to us.
Well said, James. Also in the news this morning, jurors in the trial of Brett Hankinson, the only police officer charged in connection with the botched 2020 raid that left Breonna Taylor dead, visited the 26-year-old Kentucky woman's apartment on Friday afternoon. The group of 12 jurors and 3 alternates toured Taylor's apartment, the next door neighbor's apartment where Hankinson's bullet also entered, as well as the outside of the building at the apartment complex. The visit took place so jurors would be better able to understand the evidence presented to them in court. Judge Ann Bailey Smith told them before they left the courthouse. After the visit, jurors were dismissed for the weekend with testimony set to resume tomorrow morning. Hankinson's charges are not related, of course, to Breonna Taylor's death. The former Louisville, Kentucky police officer is facing charges because during the narcotics raid on Breonna Taylor's apartment, the no-knock raid, he fired 10 shots, allegedly blindly, endangering a man, woman, and a child in the neighboring apartment. Kentucky Assistant Attorney General Barbara Whaley has said no one was charged for Breonna Taylor's death, as we know, and there are still cries for justice for Breonna Taylor. So we're watching that trial here and let it be known real closely, and at the NNPA, Black Press of America as a whole. So we'll see what happens here. It's really one of those situations where it further proves, it seems to further prove too, Dr. Chavis, that he's shot so wildly. This is the mentality that those officers went into Breonna Taylor's apartment with.
Absolutely. And while we're discussing, Louisville, Kentucky, I just want to get a shout out to the Louisville Defender, one of our African-American owned newspapers in Louisville, right there on the spot. But yes, again, this whole Breonna Taylor tragedy is symptomatic of the systemic racism that's still in the criminal justice system and too many law enforcement agencies. And I think that someone needs to look at the prosecutors again, because no one has actually been charged yet with the murder of Breonna Taylor. Her death was unjustified. It was unwarranted. They would have never went to a predominantly white neighborhood and guns blazing. This is about racial profiling, racial targeting, which disproportionately leads to tragic deaths of our men, women, and children.
Yeah, and James, I know I've heard you talk about no-knock warrants in the past, and I know that you've also, like all of us, have followed closely the Breonna Taylor situation, still unresolved. That family has not received any type of justice. What do you envision here with this trial? Do you think, James, at all that if found guilty here, this officer, if he's found guilty, do you think that could really open up the Breonna Taylor investigation even more? Perhaps the Department of Justice putting more pressure on the Louisville authorities?
Well, it could. It could. Unfortunately, you have an attorney general in Kentucky who happens to be Black, but he doesn't think like us. And so as a result of that, we don't know what's going to happen. I would hate to think that this officer would get off scot-free, because it'll only give those folks in Louisville who think like that, well, we have a free shot to do whatever we want. These no-knock warrants were designed to come into Black communities and to harass and terrorize Black people. As Dr. Chavis just said, you would not see this in the white community. So this particular case is, where is Louisville as a community in terms of policing? Where is Louisville in terms of race? And so that's why this case is so important. It's not just about this one officer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Black History Month is concluding with Black History, and Women's History Month is starting out too with some Black history. Ambitious lawyers, Dr. Chambers, I think you pointed this out before, usually become prosecutors. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson worked on behalf of criminal defendants and Guantanamo detainees after the Supreme Court's landmark 2004 ruling that Guantanamo Bay prisoners could file lawsuits challenging their indefinite detention. The federal public defender in the District of Columbia took on several such cases and assigned a young lawyer in his office to handle them. And that lawyer, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. She went on to become a federal trial judge and then an appeals court judge. She is now President Biden's Supreme Court nominee. But her 2.5 years as an assistant public defender, including her work on behalf of accused terrorists and of criminal defendants, is likely to receive particular scrutiny under the glare of her coming confirmation fight. Lawyers who harbor ambitions to be a judge, as she clearly did, having written in her high school yearbook that a judgeship was her goal, typically serve as prosecutors who help put criminals in prison. If confirmed, Judge Jackson would be the modern court's first justice with experience as a public defender. You know, James, I know, again, you pride yourself on being a historian. This is true history, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is true history. And let me say, I don't think maybe since Felix Frankfurter was on the court that you have somebody so eminently qualified to sit on that court based on credentials. She graduated from Harvard University, undergrad, magna cum laude. She graduated from the law school at Harvard, was an editor for the Harvard Law Review, cum laude. And she has, and this is what I like about her, Stacey, she has clerked for 3 federal judges at the U.S. District Court level, at the appeals level, and for Justice Breyer. So in terms of that judicial arena, she has a thorough understanding of the federal court, as opposed to some of these people who just come up there and work other places. And so this is why I think that she would be, yeah, I mean, I support her because she's a Black woman, and I think she should be on the court, but she will be a good justice because she's smart, she has experience, and she writes well. And with all due respect, gentlemen, she writes well. I don't know about the other African-American on the court in that particular vein.
Well, Dr. Chambers, David Youngblood writes in that she is eminently qualified, more than any other currently sitting on the court. I think you concur with that sentiment.
Oh, absolutely concur with that. And not since the days of Thurgood Marshall on the Supreme Court will we have an advocate for African Americans and other communities of color. Will we have an advocate who has been a defense counsel? Most of the judges don't come to the Supreme Court by way of being a defense counsel. And so she's going to bring in particular, I agree with James, she's bringing not only vast experience, but her worldview, her outlook, is going to be totally different. And if you look at all the cases over the last 20 years that the Supreme Court has been an absence of that kind of perspective. Think about how many African Americans have been put to the gas chamber or have been electrocuted in capital punishment, because when it came time for at least one Supreme Court justice, Clarence Thomas turned a deaf ear. You're not going to have that with this system. So I think that this is fundamental. It is game changing. And, listen, let's take the time to thank the Biden-Harris administration for keeping this promise to Black America.
Well, let's talk about confirmation, James. 3 Republicans, now 3 times, I should say, Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed by the Senate already, including last summer for the D.C. Circuit, her appointment there. Now, 3 Republicans were among those to confirm her, including Lindsey Graham, who over the weekend withdrew his support all of a sudden. Are we expecting this to really be a real fight to get her confirmed?
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because I watched Meet the Press yesterday with Senator Rob Portman of Ohio, and it seems like he's pretty open to voting for Judge Jackson. I would suspect that's the case for Mitt Romney of Utah. He can be open-minded on some of these issues. And I don't think this is going to be a big fight. I would be very disappointed if Tim Scott did not support her. And Tim Scott really should support her, not because she's a Black woman, even though to me, that's very, 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 very important. But he should support her because she is a good judge and she would do well on the court and she would not be an embarrassment. So I don't think this is going to be a very, very controversial. Well, there's controversy, of course, but I don't think that I don't think she's going to have any real confirmation problems.
Yeah. So again, with the backdrop of her being confirmed 3 times, how do you not get her through this time? David Youngblood mentions something that's very important too. Dr. Chapes, he says, we're not always going to agree with her decisions, but we will know she's not a self-hater. And I think, yeah, and we laugh, but, I think that is really something, we generalize it like that, self-hater, but for us, it's a real thing though, right, Dr. Chapes?
Well, absolutely. I think David is right and James is right. I think that we need to look forward. Keep in mind, elections have consequences. We would not have had this nomination if Blacks hadn't gone to the polls and recognized in 2020. Let's be honest. If President Trump had been reelected, we would not be discussing this nomination. Come on now. Now it's 2022. What are we going to do? We cannot allow the forces of repression to push us backwards at a time we need to be pushing forward. That's why, most of this year, Stacey, I know people are going to get tired of him. He's talking about connecting vote to every issue.
GOTV, he says.
Right. Yeah, we got millions of brothers and sisters in our own community that still would not register to vote. Mm. And then we got others who are registered to vote, but don't get up to go to the polls. I'm just talking to our brothers and sisters in Texas. There's early voting going on right now, and it's extremely low voter turnout among African Americans, among Latino Americans. When it comes time for us to fight back, we can't be so demoralized, so frustrated that we give up the franchise. We got power in our hands that we're not using. And I think that's where we come in, James and Stacey, that we have to use the power of the Black press to reawaken, re-engage, reinvigorate, revitalize the Black vote. We need to get DC and statehood. And all these elections have consequences, and so with the browning of America, we need to see the browning of public policy. With the browning of America, we need to see the browning of the Supreme Court. With the browning of America, we need to see the browning of the U.S. Senate and the Congress and these state legislatures. Mm-hmm. That's where the real battle is getting ready to go down. Yes. And I think we have the power to change some of these state legislatures. So I think salute to our sister who's getting ready to go to the Supreme Court. I agree that it shouldn't be any controversy. But, there'll be some who will wage a battle against our sister, but I think she's going to be successful. And I think she's going to, even though it still would be a 6-3 court, I think her voice, her writing ability, her perspective is going to have a long-lasting impact on jurisprudence in America.
Well, Stacey, may I make a point to what Dr. Chavis just said? He made an interesting point. He said that even though the ideological balance of the court will still be 6-3, however, I believe Judge Jackson will be such a force, and like Dr. Chavis said, in terms of her writing, in terms of her intelligence, in terms of her jurisprudence, she will be able to swing Chief Justice John Roberts maybe in a few cases on the more progressive side. Now, Chief Judge Roberts is not a progressive, but he is willing to listen sometimes in terms of certain cases. And I think that's very important because this is what Supreme Court justices should be doing, talking about the law in an intelligent manner and not just a lock, stop, I'm conservative, I'm right wing, that's just the way it is. And I think that Judge Jackson has the power to do that on that court.
Well, let me ask this question. And Dr. Chavis, you often talk about the distractions that continue to come up, all of these distractions. Let's go back just briefly to President Obama's terms, his 2 terms. Was it that the president at the time was too distracted to take care of these type of issues, putting the Black woman on the Supreme Court and doing other things to advance the interests of African Americans?
Well, keep in mind, if it wasn't for President Obama, we would not have President Biden. President Biden was the vice president under President Obama for 8 years. That was not an accident. And so in a large measure, the Biden-Harris administration is recapping what was initiated by President Obama. But keep in mind, Stacey, that Trump got elected in reaction to President Obama. So, the pendulum swings. The forces of history are not static. It depends on the power of the people, the power of the perspective of the people, and whose consciousness is going to win the day in terms of voter turnout. So keep in mind, for the first 4 years, the nation had to adjust to a Black man being in the White House. Come on, everybody knows that. And then in the other 4 years, he did get Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act passed, which millions of people have health care today as a result of the Affordable Care Act. So this is about building on what you gain. And no presidency of 1 term or 2 terms can do everything, but you lay a foundation that it can be built upon. And I think that's what Biden-Harris is doing. Whether he runs again or whether Kamala runs, I think they have to achieve success, legislative success in this term. And that's why, they still haven't given up on Build Back Better. They still haven't given up on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They still have not given up on the Floyd,
Justice and Police Act. Yes, George
Justice
Floyd.
and Police Act. Yeah, because I think that we need to make sure that we are continuing to push forward. So yes, I give President Obama his due. He was in there for 8 years. And I think that if you look at a lot of the people who Biden and Harris are appointing to positions, they're former Obama administration officials who are now moving up. So that's the way it should be.
Yeah, we also see with this White House, Doc, you and I have been to the White House a number of times since this administration began.
More times than ever before in the previous administration.
Yeah, and you'll be at the White House again today, Dr. Chavis. And what we see in this White House, we didn't see in any administration, including the Obama administration, right? When we walk into that White House, each time, what jumps out at us is so many individuals of color, and they're not sweeping the floor.
They're competent, they're smart, they're walking geniuses, they're representing the communities and families in which they emerged out of. You're right. As soon as you go through the gate, even before you get to the gate, I mean, I've never seen so many brothers and sisters, even on the Secret Service. So it is a thorough practice of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now we need the rest of America to practice this. When you go to the state capitals in many of these states, we're still absent. And I think that we still got a lot of work to do. For example, Maryland now is a so-called minority majority state. Will that be reflected? Look what just happened in Virginia. While we had the votes, we didn't go out in record numbers. So Virginia now is turning red. Right. So at the end of the day, it is our responsibility as a people to do all that we can to make sure that we're making progress and to make sure that the forces of racism, the forces of white supremacy are not taking away our power.
And James, I want to go to you because you mentioned several times about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's ability to write. Why is that so important?
One of the most important responsibilities of a Supreme Court justice is to write majority opinions, and in some cases, write dissenting opinions, and of course, short orders in terms of what was alluded to earlier in terms of death penalty cases, etc. Those documents become law But not only do they carry the force of law, they also set trends in terms of precedent. So when you have a well-reasoned opinion and even a well-reasoned dissent, it sets the ground rules and the ground in terms of future law. I think about Justice Harlan way back in the 1890s when Plessy versus Ferguson, which was the case that basically said that it's all right to segregate Black people in America. Justice Harlan wrote a dissent saying that this was wrong. And he said that in about a few decades, this will be reversed, and he was right. The point is that dissents can become majority opinions later on. But the key is that you have to have the legal reasoning that will set the foundation for that. And that is why it is so critical to have justices who can write intelligently on the Supreme Court. And that's why I'm very excited about Judge Jackson getting on that court, because she is such a good writer.
And there's so many, we can go on and on about her qualifications, but Dr. Chavis, briefly and lastly, what really stands out, and I'll ask you the same question, James, what really stands out, other than her writing, about Judge Jackson?
Judge Jackson is a freedom-fighting judge. Before becoming a freedom-fighting judge, she was a freedom-fighting defense counsel. I salute her. She represents the best of the best, and all of us should be very, very proud as she ascends to the highest court in the United States of America.
Yeah, and James, it's not like she didn't have a lot of competition, some really good competition, including Judge Childs in South Carolina, who was really pushed by James Clyburn, who tends to get his way.
And Judge Childs, who, by the way, is in the process of becoming on the U.S. Court of Appeals, and she will do a lot of good work on the U.S. Court of Appeals. We definitely need her there with her experiences working in state of South Carolina with workman comp, etc. But the thing about it is that, like Chavis was saying, Judge Jackson has a wide range of experiences. We haven't talked about the work that she did in terms of the U.S. Sentencing Commission and how she helped turn the crack cocaine, take away the powder, and you know what I'm talking about in terms of the crack cocaine disparities.
The disparities between those with powder cocaine and crack cocaine. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and the work she did as the vice chair of that Sentencing Commission, and she was appointed by President Obama on that. So she just has a wide range of experiences that will bring a lot of value to that court. And it is good to see, it will be good to see an African American who will really represent well on that court in terms of being a total justice.
Yeah, and James, Bobby Henry, I'm sure, with his tongue planted firmly in his cheek, says, "Thank you, James Wright, for your explanation of the need to write on the Supreme Court." He said that should have been James Wright. He spelled your name like you writing it. So in any case, Dr. Chavis and James, we again will be in Florida on Friday, Orlando. This show will broadcast live from the Disney Dreamers Academy. So a lot of young talent, young African-American talent there that's going to be there. We're going to talk to many of those young students at the Dreamers Academy. So stay tuned. Join us for that special Let It Be Known on Friday. And also, we have a YouTube channel that's coming. So join us on the YouTube channel. You can catch us right now on the Black Press USA's YouTube channel, but there'll be a sub channel for Let It Be Known with some great content. We got a lot of surprises. This is the 195th year of the Black Press of America, and you're going to be able to take a deep dive with us into the original Black Press. All of our founders, we're going to be exploring the newspapers that really have set the tone for what's right about Black America and what's right about news coverage. So take it from Bobby Henry, James Wright, I know you will be there to talk about what's right with the Black Press. So we appreciate you all. And of course, as always, our ever busy CEO, Dr. Benjamin Chavis. We always appreciate him taking out the time each morning to join us on Let It Be Known. We will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.